Hey guys, Troll9002 here with another story for your weekday. It's hump day. Tomorrow's Thursday, which means we're almost there. Don't worry, I will be posting the Throwback Thursday on the Ash Tunes page. I'll put the link below if I can remember how to do that. But today's story is called Charlie. Okay, so we all know that cancer sucks, and a cure would be amazing. Well, what if I was to tell you that a cure could be something as simple as a genetic anomaly? In this story, it all started on a rainy night at the shipping dock in the port city of Charleston. A container had come in from far away land, and in the container were plastic plants that Charlie, the seven-legged spider, mistook for real plants. You see, Charlie lived in secret in a factory that made artificial green plants. The workers liked Charlie because even though he only had 7 legs, he still did an efficient job. Charlie kept the invasive bug population down with strategically placed webs. Charlie was not your typical spider. He was born with all 8 legs, but as he grew, it was discovered that he had a rare genetic anomaly. His mom knew there was a chance that one of 1,000 eggs that she laid and hatched, one baby would have it, because it was in the genes. But of course, Charlie was the 1 in 1,000 that got it. He was the last baby to hatch, so it figures, right? As you know, spiders have feeler hairs on their legs and feet. The disorder Charlie had caused little feeler hairs to grow quick and thick. They would grow Sorry, I lost my spot. They would grow more hairs than they would need in a million lifetimes. Thankfully, Charlie's mom loved him and didn't kill him like the other spider moms would. Instead, she loved him and treated him like all the other kids. Charlie got made fun of a lot, and he just told the other kids one day he was going to do something amazing. The kids would only laugh more at that phrase, and Charlie would just ignore them. Then, one day, when Charlie was much older, he got a sensation like something big was coming. So he built a huge, spectacular web that spanned above the whole colony of spiders. And they were having hard times as far as finding food went. The bugs they once fed on just died off or disappeared. Again, the used-to-be kids, now grown, made fun of him for doing his web. Charlie persisted on working his leaves and doing his thing. His leg with the extra hairs on it was so heavy and almost burdensome for him to continue to work effectively, but he kept going. One morning, a huge swarm of locusts came right through and ran right into the web that Charlie had built. There was going to be a huge feast for the rest of the spiders. Only a few locusts escaped the web, but for the most part, he got a pretty good grab. Charlie hollered and screamed for the spiders of his colony to come out and eat and feast, and they did. Tall, small, big, one and all were welcome to the web for dinner. After a while, all the spiders hanging on the web, the moisture, and the carcasses of the locusts, the web started to weaken. Finally, one day later, the web finally gave away, and everyone started falling. Now, unfortunately, real spiders are not able to squirt web out of their wrists like Spider-Man, so many spiders died in the fall. The colony was ruined, but the spiders that did survive were smart enough, wise enough, and old enough to repopulate the colony. But first, they felt the need to run Charlie out of town, you see. Those new leaders were the kids that made fun of Charlie. It didn't matter how much good Charlie did by building the web that caught all the food they could ever need and they could preserve for years and eat on for years. Charlie, and Charlie alone, was held responsible for the deaths that occurred and was banished from the colony. He just left willingly, defeated, sad, lost, and alone. Somewhere in all the emotions, Charlie kept it in the back of his mind that he was going to be great one day. After many days of pondering and looking for a place to live, Charlie's bad sensitive leg finally fell off. His other 7 legs were fine, and he still had all the senses that he needed, and that's when he found his way to the factory. The humans were not afraid of Charlie. They just let him do his thing, building webs to keep the population of annoying bugs down. One day, Charlie stopped to rest from working his webs around the factory when the plant he rested on was suddenly wrapped in plastic, shoved into a box, and the box was put on a shipping container and shipped to the U.S. It seemed like forever, and it was dark in the box and in the container. Charlie thought the world had ended. Then suddenly there was light and people. But these people were mutants. They spoke differently. They were loud. The smells, the sights, and the sounds, nothing was what he was used to. And even though his 8th leg, with all the overabundance of feeler hairs, had fallen off, Charlie still felt like something was wrong. Charlie theorized that while he was sleeping, the world had ended. Disappointed that his family was likely gone, Charlie accepted his fate now. Now he had to find somewhere to live. Charlie scampered away from the mutants. One saw him and she screamed, which made all the other mutants start swinging and throwing things at Charlie, but he got away quick, fast, and in a hurry. Finally, outside, he discovered he was in the woods. It had started to sprinkle. Charlie had to find a home quickly. He was crawling quick and saw a blue thing on the ground. Blue happened to be Charlie's favorite color, so he ran to it. It was a strange cave-like thing, but above ground. We call it a plastic cup. Charlie walked into it, threw up a web in the opening, declared it his new home. With the web on the end of it and the abundant amount of insects he had it made. Till one day he awoke from a nap because he heard humans walking around in the woods. This was not uncommon, as people passed by often, they just never touched the cup. Oops, sorry. Bear with me, guys. Flick of the mouse. Charlie thought it was because they didn't see it. But on this day, it happened to be a team of volunteers cleaning up the woods. And this kid picked up Charlie's house at first. Charlie thought it was a dream. Then he realized that it was not a dream. And he came scampering out of the cup and came face to face with a human. This human was not startled by Charlie's presence. And so it was either continue to head into a dark sack or fight for his home. Charlie chose to fight for his home, and he bit the human in the finger, which made the human instantly drop the cup and run away. Charlie, falling with the cup, ran to his web at the end of the cup, and he ran as fast as his little 7 legs would carry him. And he latched onto the web in the opening to finish the fall to the ground. When the cup hit the ground, Charlie was cushioned by his web. Tipping back over on its side, the cup came to a rest, and Charlie, feeling accomplished, started to fix the broken spots in his web. Now, the human that was only picking up trash and meant no harm, his name was Andrew. He was part of the volunteer crew that went out on weekends and cleaned up around the neighborhoods and in the cities and anywhere they were needed. Andrew was special, you see. Andrew had stage 4 brain cancer. He didn't let that slow him down. Andrew only told some people, but all his family knew, and they didn't treat him different either. He was afraid that if a lot of people knew, he'd be treated differently, and that's not how he wanted to live. He just lived one day at a time, doing all he could for anybody he could. He went to school, he tried to do everything the other kids were doing, but he would fluster easy, and it all depended on whether or not you were willing to have patience enough to explain in detail or less detail whether or not Andrew knew what he was doing. You see, the brain cancer prevented him from doing mostly because he couldn't comprehend how it was working. But when he stepped back and let him figure it out by himself, he eventually would get it. Kids are always harsh on what they don't understand. Even to this day, no one knows why we all chalk it up to human nature. Andrew got up one morning with a headache, but today was one of those chemo days. He had to miss a day of school, which was a mental relief for a minute, but then the flood of being a day behind and the fact that he would feel like crap the next day kind of stressed him out. But he knew he could handle it. As an 18-year-old boy, he felt grown up most of the time, but on his chemo days, he needed his parents. He needed the support of people who never abandoned him. As normal as Andrew could look, being all hooked up with needles and IVs and stuff for the chemo, the doctor walked in the room and said, "Son, if there was ever a time to be thankful, this is it." Confused, Andrew asked the doctor what he meant, and before the doctor started to explain, Andrew's parents came back in the room, and the doctor sat down and showed them the improvement in death of cancer cells in Andrew's head. The doctor thought it was the chemo that was finally starting to work when he noticed the bite on Andrew's hand and said, "What is that?" Andrew said, "Oh, I was out working and I got bit by a spider." Intrigued, the doctor asked Andrew to take him out to see the spider. The next day, even though Andrew did in fact feel like crap, he took the doctor out to the woods where Charlie was. Charlie still being in the cup, living the good life, being a couch potato or a spider potato, however you want to call it. Charlie had grown fat by now, but he heard the humans coming. Andrew pointed out the cup and said, "It's that one over there." So the doctor went over, picked up the cup, saw Charlie, dumped Charlie out of the cup and into an aerated petri dish, then threw the cup back on the ground. Andrew picked up the cup and tossed it in the recycling bin. Andrew and the doctor went back to the hospital to run some tests on Charlie. That is when Andrew noticed that Charlie only had 7 legs and felt bad for him. Andrew was used to being poked and prodded by needles and such, but Charlie was not. Charlie was terrified and in pain. Andrew, wanting to be an entomologist one day, knew that spiders had sensory hairs on the bottom of their legs, so he started rubbing the little hairs at the bottom of Charlie's little spider feet. It was instant relaxation, a literal pressure point of comfort for Charlie. He melted onto the table and went into a spider-like trance. Andrew felt better that Charlie didn't seem to be freaking out anymore, and Andrew felt really bad about the testing that was going on with Charlie. But in the same token, if Charlie's spider DNA was the cause of the cancer cells dying, then more people of the world could benefit from it, right? Andrew kept up with his chemo treatments, and after a grand total of 2 years, 3 months, 6 hours, and 34 minutes, Andrew's stage 4 brain cancer was gone. There was not a trace of the cells. They had all died. Andrew's miracle hit papers, and Andrew's humble attitude and refreshing change to the great unrest in the world. Don't forget about Charlie. Sorry guys, I'm having issues tonight. Don't forget about Charlie. It was because of Charlie's genetic spider abnormality that caused him to grow more feeler heads that were thicker. The anomaly made the cancer cells more sensitive to the chemo, which destroyed it faster. Charlie was an instant overnight success, just like he told his colony he would be. Andrew was famous and told his taunters he would be too. The sensor serum was born, and thanks to Andrew's efforts, the treatment was kept affordable. And of course, thanks to the animal activists, Charlie was released back into the woods where they got him from without a cup to go home to. So this time he thought that this time he found a red cup and set himself up for living out the rest of his spider life. Of course, if your doctor wouldn't allow you to have sensor serum, or you couldn't afford it, then you could always just go straight to the source. Charlie didn't mind biting humans for a good cause, and all you had to do was bring a bug or two. Charlie never went back to a land far, far away, but you can be certain that the mean kids that had banished him from the colony eventually heard about how Charlie had become a teacher, and his unique teaching style was what saved lives. Andrew grew up to also be a teacher, and the amount of patience he had for every student is what made him famous. You just gotta set that standard for yourself and just not listen to people. You always gotta trust yourself and trust in the plan God has for you. And if you start to fall, there will always be a web to cushion or catch you. I know it's a cliche, but I always love because it has served me well. If he brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. Be like Andrew and Charlie. Help all you can, and don't let things that other people make fun of you for being just bring you down. Just keep telling yourself you're gonna be famous. It may not be like rich and famous, or even rich, but you might be famous to that kid down the block that you complimented that one day because he looked sad. Or volunteer, not for attention or recognition. Do it because people need help, and one day you might need help as well. I pray that someone will be there to help you. You all know if you need me, you know how to get a hold of me. If you ever need anything, just holler, because I am just like Charlie and Andrew. Love, hugs, and prayers. Y'all be well. Have a great rest of the week. I hope you enjoyed this story.